Hey guys, it's me again, Tracilyn, also known as VCAT, and we are here in Ono, Pennsylvania, where we're driving down the road to the first home that I had. It's not the exact trailer that we lived in, of course, when I was born, but it was one that my dad had purchased later years. So, there's a lot of farmland back here. Here, check it out. Look at all the cornfields. I used to have a lot of Amish friends when I was little growing up. I used to love helping them on the farm. Here we go. Here she is. To the left of me, of course, we have nothing but corn stalks. Lots of them. But over here is the home that I grew up in. And that's the driveway. I'm going to get out of my car up here and I'm going to kind of walk through it a little bit as best I can. We got to be quick about it though. We could upset some people. Hey guys, it's me. I'm right across the street from the house that I grew up in. It's not the exact trailer. It's located out here in Ono, Pennsylvania. This here is a trailer that my father bought quite a few years, probably in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. Here we go. So that's not exactly the steps that we walked up, but it's very close to the location that our old trailer was, with the front door. I was explaining in the last video that when I was first born, I actually remember distorted lights and sounds, just for small dosages of period of time. But the day we arrived home after leaving the hospital, I don't remember the drive, but I do remember us walking up to the front door and hearing the keys jingle. It was my dad who was unlocking the door and opening it for my mother with me in her arms. And as I heard the jingle, my eyes began to try to open up a little bit to kind of figure out what was going on. And that's when, from across the room, the living room, I saw these green lights flickering in the darkness. And I heard the first sound of music. And instantly I was drawn to it. From what I remember, it was the Eagles playing Take It Easy. That was my first love. And that's the first day that I remember falling in love with music. I don't remember a whole lot. Of course, through my infantry years, or months, if you will. But I lived here in this location for approximately 3 years. And during that time, we used to have a really big family, so we would always have family gatherings. My dad was a truck driver. My mom was a stay-at-home. She took care of me and my 3 other siblings. I have 2 sisters and 1 brother. I was the youngest, of course. So I was Mama's spoiled little child. And she was pretty committed to sharing a lot of life with me. So, with my dad driving, he was gone most of the week. We had a home-based CB. So every time that he would be leaving or coming in, my mother would have that home CB set on, and he would radio in. He would talk to us until he was out of the area, or when he was coming in, he would begin to talk, and he would talk to us until he pulled the truck in, right over here in the driveway. So I remember how excited I would be when he would arrive. He would always pull it up this way, towards where my car is, up there. And then he would back it into the driveway there, at the same spot all the time. And depending on the hour, of course, we would all run out. Or at that time, my mother would carry me out to greet him. We used to love, that was a big thing. That was our entertainment as children growing up. Of course, our family's biggest entertainment and passion was music. My mother loved music a lot. She was raised in a musical family, which I'll begin to share with you in the other locations that I'm going to. The one thing is for sure, with my mom growing up in a musical family and having a strong love of music herself, and that being a very strong attraction of mine as a child, the day I was born, basically. It never failed. All day long we would have the radio playing. And she collected vinyl albums and 45. And we would love to all sit and gather around her, even me as a toddler, playing with her album covers. And she'd always ask us to pick out the different songs that we wanted to hear. And of course, though I couldn't really communicate too well, I would usually be nibbling on one with my gums. Drooling all over her collection. Because music was her passion, usually every night we would get together and we would dance in the living room. We had a lot of fun doing that. Some of the things that I remember that I loved the most while we were living here was the nights that we would play the music and sing. She would sing all the time to me. And she would hold me in her arms and dance around the living room, around the house. And once I got to the age that I could actually walk, you know, these are things that I'm remembering as when I was a toddler, is she would chase me around the house. And I would try to encourage her to chase me up and down the hallways that we used to have. And at that time, in the trailer, it seemed like it was so big, but it was really obviously, it wasn't that big at all. But to me, it took me forever to get from one end of the trailer to the next. And when my mother was chasing me, I would laugh all the time. I loved my mother a great deal. So that was the two sources of entertainment. It was music, and it was our home base CB. We loved to talk to the truck drivers. And they got to know my mother quite well. They were very good friends with my dad. A lot of those people at that time, anyway, were very connected together. Sometimes the different truck drivers, sometimes families of truck drivers, because back then, sometimes husbands and wives, they drove together. And they would actually come by. They'd park their trucks up the road. My mother would run up and get them. They'd come back to the house. And, you know, we were big on drinking and celebrating. So they would come here and hang out sometimes for the night. Always very friendly, very laid back. And we had a floor model television. And one of my favorite shows that we used to watch, of course, was Sonny and Cher. I really loved that a lot. And the Muppets, of course. But I remember the first time I saw, and remember reflecting back, was a television show of Hee Haw and Sonny and Cher. And I love Cher's long hair. Ever since then, I would tell my mother that I want to have long hair. I want to have long hair. I want to have long hair like Cher. I didn't want to be like Sonny. I wanted to be like Cher instantly. It was kind of funny. And my mom was very happy and very upbeat. So she would spend a lot of quality time with her kids. Her kids, if you were to ask her, even to this day, what do you feel was your strongest passion in life? She would say her children. Her children meant everything in the world to her. And I don't want to say that I was her favorite, but for some reason we connected with each other in a much different level. Maybe because at that time other children were in school and doing their things, and we got to spend all day long together. I never went to a babysitter, very rarely anyway. As I was growing up, did I ever go to a babysitter. But one of my favorite things that we used to do in the backyard, which I'm going to try to get a little bit closer here, is sunbathe. As I was growing up as a child, my mother was actually my biggest inspiration. She was very beautiful. She reminded me of Olivia Newton-John. And she always, every day she woke up, she would be doing her makeup, she would style her hair. She always looked like a model to me. And she was my role model. You know, I wanted to look and be just like her when I got older. So because we shared so much time together, I got involved in doing a lot of girly things. Well, stereotypical girly things. And I really enjoyed it a lot. We would turn on the music, we would clean the house. She would always ask me, do you want to help me clean? And my favorite, of course, was to run the vacuum cleaner. At least I'd try. When I was that little, it was still hard. But even as I got older, I loved to vacuum. Even to this day, I like to kind of go over with the vacuum cleaners. And dust was my big thing. I don't really like to do that too much anymore. But I used to love dusting. And we would remove all of the knickknacks. That was fun for me. And at that time, we used Pledge and rags. And I would spray it down. I used to love spraying it. She would say, not that much. Because I would put it on really thick. And then I would use a rag and just wipe everything down and put it back up. And that was just always a good pastime for me. While she would be doing like the dishes. I never really cared for doing dishes. And some of the other more crucial things, you know, the higher places and stuff. So as well, my mother had a Pinto, a blue Pinto. It was kind of like a very small station wagon, and we used to ride in the back of that car all the time. Except for me, I always wanted to sit in the middle, which nowadays you could never get away with doing that. But there was a center console, and I used to love sitting on that because I always wanted to be close to my mother. Always wanted to be close to my mother. And at that time, we would get away with driving the car. So even as a child, as a toddler, though I couldn't drive the car by myself, my mother would let me sit on her lap, and we would drive the car in the yard, and she would let me hold the steering wheel, and wherever I steered, all that stuff wasn't there before. It was just grassland back there for the most part. Wherever the car went. And she always had such a funny sense of humor about everything, you know? But we had a lot of fun. And the other kids, of course, she would actually let them drive in that backyard. And back then, it seemed like it was just so big. You know, like a big Walmart parking lot or something. And so over here is the garage. See it over there? And in that garage was a tractor. A very old lawn tractor. And guess who got to love to drive one of those things? Moi. That's right. One of my favorite things at that time, which kind of changed a lot over the years, was mowing our grass. Whenever my dad was home on the weekends, that was his job. He mowed the grass. And we had an old tractor. I can't remember what it was, if it was a Ford or what have you. But I would sit on his lap, and he would cut this whole lawn. And I'm telling you, it seemed like it took forever, but I always had so much fun laughing and holding. And through the years, as I grew up, it started to become the thing that I looked forward to on the weekends when he would be home, which I'll explain a little bit later. I would come over here to this place and I would cut the grass for him. And I always looked forward to that, especially when I got to the point that I could actually start it up by myself and drive it, you know, go out to the garage and get it myself. And when he wasn't around, and when the grass didn't need cut, I actually had one of them there push mowers that blew bubbles. And while my mom was laying out sometimes, and you know me, I couldn't sit still too long back then. So I had to be playing with my yard toys. And I had one of them push toy lawnmowers that made bubbles. And it had this sound of like plastic. It would hit together and it would sound like it was actually a lawnmower. That was fun. I still remember what it looked like. It was blue and red and yellow. So anyway, also I think I'm kind of skipping around here a little bit, but I do remember, like I said, this was a big meeting place for our family. So we had our grandparents on my dad's side primarily. There was relations on his side, his brother, his wife and his children. And I mean, it just goes on and on. We had a really big family gathering on a pretty regular basis. And believe it or not, even before I was 1 year old, I remember getting tossed around. Not necessarily tossed, but they were kind of handing me around, and they would take turns holding me and bouncing me on their leg, feeding me, burping me. And I remember it was during those times that I started to have a really good relationship with my dad's dad, who is my grandfather. Of course, he had passed away quite a few years ago, but I really admired him in so many ways. He was the ice cream man, and around here, everyone knew him as the ice cream man. And it wasn't the old kind that you may be thinking about, where they played music and he went around and they sold milkshakes and stuff like that. He actually, here, let me show you the corn here for a little while. He actually started his business out in a pickup truck, going door to door, selling potato chips and pretzels. And from there, it turned into ice cream. And he got another truck, and then another truck. And he just had several trucks, and then eventually that's how my dad started driving truck. My dad started working for him, and so did his other sons. And then later on, they branched off, and then they got their own trucks, and then they got working for other companies and things like that. They kind of went their own ways. But for a long season of time, that house over there became my grandparents. Not too long before they both passed on. Where that house is sitting right now, behind it, in between the house and the garage, there was another trailer that was later put there many years later. Probably by the time I was in my 10 or 11 years old. And that's where they stayed until that house was built, which was actually built by their family, their sibling, their daughters and their sons. They got together with them to build them a nice little home. So I don't want to get too much started on talking about their lives. I'm going to try very hard to stay centered on what I had to go through, because I want to share with you my testimony. Let me see, what else was there that I wanted to touch base on? Here's something. In later years, which I will explain here in just a little bit, my parents were divorced, probably when I was like 3 or 4. So as the years went on into my teen years, so I was like around 14, 15, I would come out here for many years with my father on the weekend when he would get home from the road. And I would always volunteer to mow the grass. I looked forward to that, to spend time with my dad on the weekends and mow the grass. And though you can't see it, let me see if I can cross the street here without getting run over. Right here where this little shrubby thing is, there was some kind of stake, and I think it was to separate the land, like this here is right now. See that? I'm almost sure that's what it was for. You know, it was kind of to mark the property line. Well, anyway, I knew it was there, and he warned me about it many times. In fact, so much that he didn't want me mowing over here. He wanted me to stay in the backyard, and then he'd get it with the push mower later on. Because at that time, even still, he didn't want me using the push mower. To him, it wasn't safe. But I was on the tractor, and I knew he was tired from the road, and he loved to take his naps on a Saturday afternoon. And he was like, why don't you go out and cut the grass or something? And I did. But I brought the tractor down here, down this aisle. There wasn't all these trees and stuff there at the time. And wouldn't you know, I thought I could get very close to it, cutting the grass and all. and I accidentally got stuck on it. I didn't even just run it over, I got stuck on it. And I couldn't know how to get it off, and I didn't know how to go in reverse. I didn't know anything about that because he didn't want me ever to use it in reverse. He just always wanted me to go forward. He'd put it in a certain gear and then he'd just go, right? Because at that time I was still very, very young. But I got stuck on it and I didn't know what to do. And I panicked and I ran into the house, and meanwhile the blades are hitting against it, making all this sound, and I'm freaking out. I'm so scared to go tell my dad what I did wrong. And I went in and I told him. And of course he, like any other parent, he was at first stunned and concerned, but he was also very upset because I did something he told me not to do. I guarantee you, ever since then, I promised him I would never, never, never do that again, and I did not. I stayed away long ways. It was funny because then later on, instead of trying to get as close as I could to be helpful in cutting the grass, I would go way around it. In fact, to the point that I just stopped going up there, period. We used to play in the yard a lot. Years ago, like nowadays, people would say to their children, you know, why don't you go to your room and play your video games or play on your computer? I mean, them are the most common things. Or why don't you go watch television? Okay, but back in the day, living here, my mother, when she felt like the stress was starting to get to her, because I mean, let's just face it, it's a very stressful position to be a loving parent, and sometimes you need time to be alone. She wouldn't tell us to go watch television. She would say, why don't you go outside and play? And to me at that time, when she would say that, we understood because our family was very tight. We loved each other a great deal. And I knew, I could sense that my mother needed time to be alone. So we would go out together as children, of course, all excited because to us we're being set free. Let's go out and play. And even then, you know, now I'm going back to the toddler years. Of course, I would try to keep up with everybody else, and it was hard. Sometimes the screen door would get closed on me. A lot of times I got left behind in the back, and I was always I was spending more time instead of playing, trying to keep up with everybody. So, here's another bizarre story for you. As I go through and I share with you my life testimony, I assure you that some things are going to seem a little far-fetched, a little unbelievable, but I'm going to be honest with you on some things that I recall and I remember. And a lot of this stuff that I'm going to share with you, I can guarantee you that there's a lot of other people that were involved in my life that at the time, they would be able to fall into agreement and say, you know what, we didn't know what it was. We didn't know what was happening. But we do remember some things pretty close to what Tracilyn is telling with you, sharing with you, sharing with you, sharing with you. Right here at this window. See that? Right now, I'm not sure if that's a bathroom or if it's a hallway window. But see where that one is behind the tree? And then this one over here. They used to be bedrooms in the old trailer. They were the bedrooms. This one over there, that's the living room. Okay? Now, this is a unique story. I don't know how or why, because like I said, I was probably around 2 at this time. I ended up going into the bedroom, but it wasn't my bedroom. I think it was my sister's. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was my sister's bedroom. Now, why I was in there, I don't really understand. I just do know this, that I heard something outside. And I was curious to know, what is outside my window? And I stood up on, I think it was a toy box. It could have been the bed. I stood up and I looked out the window. And I went screaming into the living room because I swore that I saw an alien. Now, I don't remember what this figure looked like. I don't know what it was. And to be honest with you, I don't know if it was one of my mother's friends or if it was somebody playing games with me. But I do know this. I was 100% concrete that it was an alien. Pretty bizarre, huh? But our family thrived telling ghost stories. There was always some kind of mysterious ghost story going on. My mom used to love, and so did a lot of the guys that would come here, to scare the children. And of course I would always run and hold on to my mother, or a lot of times at night I couldn't sleep because I was scared, so I would run into my mom's room. And she liked that, of course. She was my security blanket when I was little growing up. She was everything to me. At that time I did not have friends, I had my family. My family was everything to us. I'm not sure if we had pets. I think we may have had a dog that maybe got hit on this road here. I'm not sure. But I faintly remember that. And we might have had a cat or two. Maybe it was a cat that got hit here. I'm not sure. That's a little bit foggy to me. I could probably talk to my mom and find stuff out like that. I don't remember if we had house pets at this time anyway. But I do remember the critical moments were with the stereo. You know, I fell in love with music that day, instantly, upon arriving in our house. The green lights flickering in our living room. I knew exactly, at that time, what my strongest love was. What I loved the most, I guess you could say, in life. I remember sharing time with our family. I remember dancing with my mother and listening to her 45s. I remember the alien. Also, many of you might not know this unless you're a native of Lebanon, Pennsylvania. But the year I was born, there was a pretty drastic flood. They call it the flood of 72. We had a lot of rain the year that I was born. And I remember looking at the pictures with my grandparents and everybody else that had old newspaper clippings and stuff like that, which I'll start to talk about a little bit later on. I want to take you down here to the Swati that is right down from our house. And look down here. Down that road is a Swati and a bridge that goes over the Swati. We had a lot of fun down at that Swati for many, many years. But first, I want to share with you one of the most traumatizing and scary moments of driving with my mom in her Pinto. So I want to just take this camera around. We may return here at a later date. But I'm surprised. I was very grateful to find out that there isn't no housing development over here. It is very much still the cornfield. So now we're going to take a trip on down to the Swati. I'm not sure if I'm going to have this all edited together. Of course, this may even be in sections. This is something new that I'm trying. I appreciate you being patient and understanding, compassionate, forgiving, because my ultimate goal in this is to just share my life with you guys so you can get to know me a little better. Like I said, I had a wild life. I've done all kinds of things, been through all kinds of things. And as I go on, I'll share with you about how I always looked at life very negatively. That was just my locked-in way of thinking. And it was pretty devastating to the point that I almost took my life many times. And I know right now, you know, people may be listening to this and trying to figure it out and finding it maybe a little boring. But I assure you that as time goes on, my hope is that by sharing my life with you and with my family, they'll realize how much everyone meant to me. You know, especially after taking time away to think about things, get to know myself better. I figured out some things about, you know, where I was going wrong. You know, and up here, my head just needed a tune job, you know? And I know there's some people out there that are struggling with the fact that I am a transgendered lady, you know? And because of the life I have, maybe there's somebody, instead of taking their life or staying focused on all the negative things that are going on in their life now, they can see the beauty in it. Much like this place. Isn't it beautiful? I would love to have a quiet home, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. As long as I could go into a big city and be close to an ocean. I'm an ocean girl, beach girl, if you will. And we used to cut all this grass. At the time when I was a toddler, that house did not exist. Those trees did not exist. And that was not the trailer. Oh, and one more thing here. What was big back in the 70s, at least, maybe the 60s, I don't know, but in the 70s, was customized vans. And let me tell you something. My dad had some of the most amazing customized vans. 2 of them that I remember. I love those vans. The first one was stick shift on the column. Had round windows, I think, in the back. Green was his color. I don't know why he always chose green. But he had green vans. And they were loud. They had cherry bombs on them. He was a big Dodge man, too. I don't remember what the first one was, but I know the last one was. But what he would do sometimes is, on the weekend, he would park his van out back in the yard. And when we would come over, me and my sister, and at that time, after our parents had divorced, which I forgot to mention, and I'll re-mention that then, is park the van out back, and we were allowed to kind of camp out in it. Because I didn't like getting bit up by mosquitoes, so at that time I didn't want to be in a tent, and I didn't want to brave it by just sleeping outside, but it was so beautiful. So I chose, and we chose to sleep in the van. He had beds in the back, carpeted, wall-to-wall carpeting. His second van had mirrors above the bed, and of course, like anyone else, we loved that. We used to put our feet up against it and kind of dance around on it while we were listening to the music. He didn't like that, and we usually ended up having to wash the mirrors. But me and my sister used to love cleaning it out. Of course, I love sweeping it and dusting it and washing it. As well, we used to wash his truck too when he would come home. That was always fun because it was a tank that was used for hauling liquid. You know, I don't know if it was milk at the time or what it was. But when he parked in the driveway there, of course, he washed all of his own vehicles, and guess who was elected and volunteered as well to wash them? And I used to love it because when you would walk in front of the barrel or the can, your image would show up, but you'd look little, squished together like a marshmallow. And I used to love doing that, especially when it was clean, you know. When it was dirty, I didn't like it so much, so that's why I'd love to wash it and then just see how shiny it was. It was so beautiful. And his truck was green. The truck that hauled the trailer was green. And so that was something too. And I loved riding with him in the truck. I was so tiny, and that truck at that time seemed so enormous, but it really was one of the smaller trucks on the road. Very cute, a Mack truck. He loved Mack. And I always loved the little dog that was on top of the hood there, you know? And when he would have us clean, my sister would clean the inside. I never really liked cleaning the inside of the truck. I did love washing it, though. I used to love with the hose. In fact, so much that he would have to do let me know that enough was enough. No more water, Tracilyn. So, Anyway, we're gonna head on down here to the Swati where we spent a lot of family time together. And all my life, I must say that one of my things was I was hoping someday to live here again. Back then, you know, through my years, in a place similar to this, because as a child growing up, this was home. This is where our family was. This is where I was born to be, kind of thing. Now, I've changed a lot since then. I really like the freedom of going everywhere, but at that time, for many years, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to return to this property someday. So anyway, there's a truck man. Try to get him to blow his horn. Maybe next one that comes through will. I think that's pretty much it. So as I was going to say is, by the time I was 3 years old, from what I remember, parents separated. There were some things going on in their relationship, and I guess they came to the point in their life, at least I know my mother did, that it was time to move on. And one time when he was out on the road, I'll never forget, this was a huge turning point in my life. My daddy went out on the road, and while he was gone, we had a vehicle ready. I did not know at that time, but we moved out, and we went to the next place that eventually I'll show you. So I have total forgiveness for everything, and I understand more now about relationships than I ever did. So, Mom, Dad, if you see this, I love you guys both. That was a major turning point in my life, you know, that impacted me for a long time. Because having that family was just everything to me, even as a toddler. I didn't understand at all what was going on. And it hurt me a lot to lose the man that I looked up to in my life. I wanted to be like my dad as well. I want to be like my dad and my mom. I don't know if most children are like that. I would assume probably, you know, maybe so, maybe not. I didn't know. What about you? Did you want to be like your parents? I think you ought to leave me a comment down below. In fact, I would appreciate that. Can you remember back to the time when you were first born? Do you remember when the doctor first held you and handed you to your mother? Do you remember anything as crazy as thinking you saw aliens in front of your window? Do you remember the first thing you noticed as a child? Was it the stereo? Was it the television? What about Cher? Do you remember Sonny and Cher? If you do, you're not alone. Yes, you're not alone. What about you? What was your pastime? What did you do as a family? Did you listen to vinyl albums? 45s? Do you know what a 45 is? Did you have brothers and sisters? Was it your grandparents that raised you? Was it your mom and dad? You know, whatever it was. I think it's important that at some time in our life, we're always taught to reevaluate history of everything. You know, we take classes for it. But I've never been taught, and if I wasn't paying attention, the importance of reevaluating our own life. There's a lot to be learned in the process. And while you're watching this, let's not just keep it focused on myself. Let's walk through our life journey together. I want to get to know you. That would mean a lot to me. I love to hear about other people's lives. So know that. It's not all about me. It's about you. That's why I'm here. So did you see aliens? Be honest. Don't hold back. Let it out. Share it with me. I won't laugh at you. I'll laugh with you. Do you remember playing kickball? What was your pastime? What did you do when you were a toddler? What did you enjoy doing? Share it with me down below. Don't forget to hit the like button. And of course, I gotta say, share it with your friends. I got a website at tracilyn.com. I also have a Facebook page. If you type in my name, Tracilyn, 1N, I should come up in Google or YouTube. You can get to know a lot about me when you do that. Maybe too much, too soon. Maybe not enough for some of you. But I want to get to know about you. I'm one person in the world that won't judge you. I will do my very best not to judge you. We're going to go on to the next house, house number 2. Amazing things happened at that house. I'm going to take you down here to the Swati where we used to hang out, and along the way down there, I'm going to share with you some pretty bizarre other occurrence that happened on a dark night when we went for a ride in our Pinto. Here comes the truck. I don't know if it showed up. This is country living here, baby. It even smells like it.